Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia, WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Great to be with you. After a year of moving at the speed of Trump, something very interesting has fallen off the radar, and that's basically the North Korean denuclearization effort. What do I mean by that? It was just last year, last summer, as a matter of fact, summer 2017, where we were getting missile launches and threats and tremendous dialogue between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un of North Korea that had people believing that there's going to be an imminent nuclear war between North Korea and the United States. And everyone kept wondering, what was Donald Trump doing? Why you keep insulting the man? Why you keep calling him out? It even culminated with this speech at the United Nations in September of 2017.
No one has shown more contempt for other nations and for the well-being of their own people than the depraved regime in North Korea. It is responsible for the starvation deaths of millions of North Koreans and for the imprisonment, torture, killing, and oppression of countless more. We were all witness to the regime's deadly abuse when an innocent American college student, Otto Warmbier, was returned to America only to die a few days later. We saw it in the assassination of the dictator's brother using banned nerve agents in an international airport. We know it kidnapped a sweet 13-year-old Japanese girl from a beach in her own country to enslave her as a language tutor for North Korea's spies. If this is not twisted enough, now North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. That's what the United Nations is all about. That's what the United Nations is for. Let's see how they do.
Gotta admit, that's pretty brazen to call somebody out of their name on the floor of the General Assembly. of the United Nations. But that's what Donald Trump did. By doing so, he actually parlayed this into a cease of missile launches. They stopped. Donald Trump did not capitulate to North Korea as previous administrations had done all the way back to Richard Nixon. He stood up and told him, if you don't stop, we'll kill you. In effect, because he had actually threatened Guam at one time. The island of Guam was under threat. This led to something that hadn't happened, wasn't anticipated, a meeting between the North Korean president and the the South Korean president and the dictator of North Korea.
Both on and off the record, White House officials will tell you, listen, they are very pleased, but they are also clearly cautiously optimistic. Especially cautious. Let me take you back to Twitter. You just showed a tweet the president had. He actually has had several tweets this morning. Every time I have a script to turn in, he has another tweet, so then I have to adjust the script. Well, let me just share this one. I think you'll find it instructive. The president saying, after a furious year of missile launches and nuclear testing, a historic meeting between North and South Korea is now taking place. Good things are happening, but only time will tell. Again, that emphasis on the caution. The historic gathering coming ahead of proposed talks between the U.S. and North Korea, set to take place sometime in late May or early June.
Let's walk together by uniting our minds, efforts, and our wisdoms together to the future, where a new era, new dreams, and hopes are waiting.
And we take you back to Twitter. This time it's Sarah Sanders, the White House press secretary. She said this, of course, on the heels of yesterday's confirmation of the new Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Said, great to have Secretary Pompeo confirmed. He will do an excellent job helping POTUS lead our efforts to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. And I show this because, obviously, he has previously met with the leader from Pyongyang. POTUS, by the way, also thanking China's President Xi, saying on Twitter that without him, even getting to this point would have been much tougher and it would have been a much longer process. Rick?
So the two Korean leaders got together at the 37th parallel. They even symbolically crossed over into each other's country, the whole thing. Then they have a summit, and that cleared the way for a summit between, pause for effect, Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. When's the last time that an American president had met with the leader of North Korea? Any of the three current generations. But he did. At the end of that, they actually signed an agreement. Now, you got to remember, that was in June. September, which was just 9 months earlier, they were talking as though somebody was going to war. The truth of the matter is none of that was going to occur. That was not Donald Trump's intent. His intent was to manipulate, in accordance with the tradition of that culture, the behavior of Kim Jong-un, and he did so. This from The Guardian in early June regarding the Trump-Kim summit.
Mr. President, did he agree to denuclearize?
We're starting that process very quickly. Very, very quickly. Absolutely.
Mr. President, 100% denuclearization?
You'll be seeing everything in just a little while. The letter that we're signing is very comprehensive. And I think both sides are going to be very impressed with the result. A lot of goodwill went into this, a lot of work, a lot of preparation. I want to thank everybody on both sides, Secretary Pompeo and all of his counterparts. They were absolutely fantastic.
우리는 오늘 역사적인 이 만남에서 지난 과거를 덮고 새로운 출발을 알리는 역사적인 문건에 서명을 하게 됩니다. 세상은 아마 중대한 변화를 보게 될 것입니다. 오늘과 같은 이런 자리를 위해서 노력해 주신 트럼프 대통령께 사의를 표합니다.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kim, would you like to come to Washington? Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Now, I recognize most of my listeners do not speak Korean, and to summarize the words of the North Korean leader, he wanted to leave the past behind. This was a new beginning. In other words, things are going to change. And he did sign an agreement with Donald Trump that spoke specifically about denuclearization. People don't want it. And now, of course, it's not happening fast enough. It's amazing how quickly people forget. When was the last time North Korea launched a missile? When's the last time that North Korea tested a nuclear device? Because that's what was happening just over a year ago, and happening on a frequent basis to the point that most of the world was alarmed. It stopped. And it stopped not because Donald Trump coddled him, it's because Donald Trump confronted him, which was obviously the appropriate track that probably should have been taken by previous American presidents and the rest of the world who follows the American lead. They did not. You might recall that the president of South Korea, while this process was ongoing, said that Donald Trump should probably win the Nobel Peace Prize. I guess that's been forgotten as well. And now here we are. This came out of Voice of America on September 7th. They're actually talking about denuclearization and how it is still a process that moves forward. But of course, the experts, the same experts who couldn't figure out how to get North Korea to a negotiating table, are still skeptical about anything that is affected by Donald Trump.
Chae Woo-young, President Moon's top security advisor, led the South Korean delegation.
The South and North agreed to hold an inter-Korean summit on September 18th to 20th for 3 days and 2 nights in Pyongyang, and to hold high-ranking working-level talks early next week at Panmunjom to discuss protocol, security, communications, and media coverage as part of preparations for the summit.
Chung said Kim wished to denuclearize and end hostilities with Washington before 2021, adding that the North Korean leader's faith in U.S. President Donald Trump was unchanged, something the U.S. president thanked him for on Twitter. Troy University International Relations lecturer Daniel Pinkston says there is skepticism about Kim's commitment to denuclearization.
Well, I don't see any written commitments. There are a number of written mechanisms, legal mechanisms, in ways that they can demonstrate politically and legally that they're bound to these denuclearization commitments.
Harry Kazianis is the Director of Defense Studies at the Center for the National Interest. He doubts Kim Jong-un will denuclearize, but notes a shift from the fire and fury days of 2017.
If the goal is the complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization or CVID like we used to hear a few months ago, it's probably not going to happen. But there is a lot of ways to lessen tensions with North Korea and to have what I would call a working relationship.
If North Korea commits to arms control, arms reduction, and denuclearization, Pinkston says,
there are a number of opportunities that are open for North Korea. And of course, it can't happen overnight. It will take years.
The 1950-53 Korean War ended with an armistice and not a peace treaty, leaving the peninsula technically still at war. President Moon has made an end-of-war declaration one of his goals. At the United Nations General Assembly in late September, South Korea will seek a trilateral summit or possibly a four-nation meeting that includes China to declare a formal end to the conflict. Kazianis doesn't think such an announcement is likely, but he said that doing so at some point...
We're basically all agreeing that the war is over. If at that point Kim Jong-un still will not budge on denuclearization, I think you have an understanding that he's never going to do it.
Steve Miller, VOA News, Washington.
What I get out of that clip is two things. What Donald Trump put in motion by calling him Rocket Man in September of last year, a year ago, has resulted in a process whereby North Korea is looking to not only cease nuclear activities, and I don't know what that means, but I do know this. We're not seeing missile launches. I do know we're not seeing nuclear testing. I do know that. I also understand that the threats of nuclear war that everyone's trying to hang around the president's neck, those have dissipated as well as the reporting. This was a year. It was September of last year when Donald Trump stood up in the UN and called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man and said that if need be, we would totally destroy North Korea. That was a year ago. Where are we today? Nuclear, I'm not going to say dearmament, but denuclearization is still on the table. A formal declaration of the end of the nuclear war. South Korea and North Korea presidents, leaders, crossing the border into each other's territory, meeting at their own summits, trying to figure out how they might actually reunify Korea, which I guarantee you makes China less than comfortable. Very much so. Because a unified Korea would not have the economy of the North. It would be more likely to adopt the economy of the South, which would create a huge capitalist nation with a border on China. And as China's economy is starting to lose steam, don't let the smooth taste fool you. China's got troubles economically. If the Koreas become one nation and begin to mobilize as a capitalist power on the Asian continent, the pressure on the current form of government in China would be significant. They're not interested in that. Yet and still, Donald Trump has maneuvered them into a position where they can and likely will be instrumental in moving those two nations away from their unended war toward unification and also toward free market economics. This is remarkable. And to not want to give Donald Trump the credit for that, because here's what it comes down to. How did this get off the news pages? How did this get off the front pages of every news? How did this not become the lead? Why isn't it the lead that the North Korean discussions of denuclearization continue? That discussions regarding ending the nuclear war, the Korean War formally continue. For those who do not know and miss what was said in the piece, they had an armistice. They just said we're going to stop shooting. They never ended the war. They're talking about a state of no war. You know what that means? American troops can come home. We have troops in North Korea guarding that 37th parallel, 37th, 38th parallel, whichever parallel it is, guarding that parallel which separates North Korea from South Korea. The American troops can come home. Oh, did you also forget that the North Koreans actually started sending the remains of American soldiers from the from the Korean War home? Did you forget that? That war ended 60 some odd years ago. We've had quite a few presidents since 1953. None of them were able to get any remains of U.S. soldiers back home for burial in this country. And this was all done by understanding who he was dealing with. The problem is very few people do understand who they're dealing with in the Koreas. We know that Barack Obama did not understand. We know that George W. Bush obviously did not understand, and Bill Clinton was probably too busy getting serviced by interns for him to even be thinking about the Koreas. And Bill Clinton's approach to everything was to either throw hardware or money at it. It was never diplomacy. He didn't understand what diplomacy was unless he was trying to take advantage of a female. He doesn't understand that. And you can go back even to Reagan, who many acknowledge as a great conservative president. He couldn't get anything done in Korea. Go back as far as you want. Go all the way to Nixon. Nobody was getting anything done in Korea. Now all of a sudden, people are talking about no more nuclearization, no more state of war, possible reunification. And this is all happening at the behest of Donald John Trump, happening on his watch, happening because of his involvement. If this were any other president, I guarantee you, had Hillary won the election, of course she wouldn't be involved in something like this, but had she prevailed, this would be all you talked about all day long, what a great president Hillary is. Well, if Hillary would have been a great president for doing this, then Donald Trump is a great president for having done it. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. FreedomInAmericaRadio.com. And WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 106.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, Barack Obama has decided he is going to help the GOP in the midterm elections. What do I mean by that? He started a campaign tour on behalf of Democrats. He opened that up in Illinois, and he spent a lot of time there, not talking about the candidates, not talking about their policies or whatever the Democrat positions are. He spent a lot of time talking about himself. He made more than 100 mentions and references to himself during that speech, and a bunch of veiled references to Donald Trump. But how that's going to help the Democrat fortunes at the ballot box is unknown, because you didn't do anything to publicize the Democrats who were running. Hardly. That's not even the coverage. The coverage is really about what you said about yourself. For example, he criticized Donald Trump for not criticizing Nazis. You know, how hard is it to say that Nazis are bad? Well, Mr. President, how hard was it for you to say that Islamic terrorism was bad? Because I don't even remember you even bothering to allow the words Islamic terror to come out of your mouth during the 8 years you served. What about saying that Antifa is bad? And they've proven themselves worse even after you left office. Did you ever acknowledge or denounce them, sir? I don't recall that. But, okay, I get it, I think. But, it kind of went on from there. It was kind of strange. Some of the things that were said were, in my estimation, they were kind of ridiculous. Here is Barack Obama on using the government against people.
We do not pressure the Attorney General or the FBI to use the criminal justice system as a cudgel to punish our political opponents, or to explicitly call on the Attorney General to protect members of our own party from prosecution because an election happens to be coming up. I'm not making that up. That's not hypothetical.
You're not making that up, Mr. President? Can I ask, who was it that targeted James Rosen, then of Fox News, as a co-conspirator in a spy case? Who was it that was spying on Cheryl Atkinson? I believe at that time she was with CBS News, and they still bear the scars of that, Mr. President. And that was your administration that was doing it. That was the FBI and intelligence agencies that were run by you. Did that not happen? Are we making that up? What about the IRS targeting conservative groups? That's now been proved, acknowledged. Is that not using the government to cudgel people? I mean, that's pretty brutal to have the IRS come after you, the world's most brutal collection agency, that a bunch of unelected people who can just ruin and ravage your finances and everything else, and they did that with some conservative organizations, almost shutting them down with the unfair requirements that were put upon them to report things to the IRS. You had nothing to do with that? Didn't you appoint the IRS commissioner? Didn't you protect Lois Lerner? What about the FBI and the DOJ covering for Hillary Clinton? You had nothing to do with that? How about the meeting on the tarmac where obviously Bill Clinton got a word into your Attorney General Loretta Lynch? Was that not using the government to protect someone as an election came up, the 2016 general election to be exact? I'm trying to figure out how this works, Mr. President, Mr. Former President, thank goodness, because your hypocrisy is on another level, to be honest with you. It's just outrageous. Then there was the comments that he wanted to make about the economy, which I thought were interesting. Here's what he had to say, and this is a contrast. This is what Barack Obama was saying in 2018 at his speech in Illinois, and then the sound's going to change a little bit as you hear what he had to say in 2016 as the election was approaching.
When the job numbers come out, monthly job numbers, and suddenly Republicans are saying it's a miracle, I have to kind of remind them, actually, those job numbers are the same as they were in 2015 and 2016.
Because some of those jobs of the past are just not going to come back. And when somebody says, like the person you just mentioned, who I'm not going to advertise for, that he's going to bring all these jobs back. Well, how exactly are you going to do that? What are you going to do? There's no answer to it. He just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, how exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is he doesn't have an answer.
But he did have an answer, Mr. President. He got rid of your regulations, and he managed to get a tax reduction bill through Congress that he could sign. That's what happened. So while you're in 2016 saying the jobs were never coming back, you're in 2018 saying the job recovery started in 2015 and 2016. You can't have it both ways, Mr. President. If it was going on, then how come nobody felt it? There was no recovery in 2015 and 2016. In 2015, the economy grew at an anemic 2.9% for the year. And in 2016, your last year in office, it grew at 1.6%. It went down from 2015 to 2016. How's the recovery going on then, Mr. President? Overall, your 8 years in office, you averaged less than 2% GDP growth per year. What recovery? That's not a recovery. That's stagnancy in misery. This is the problem with dealing with Barack Obama. But by the way, while we're on the subject of economics, perhaps you'll remember back before the 2010 midterms, he was at a town hall, and a woman named Velma Hart, who was a supporter of Barack Obama, had gotten the opportunity to express her frustration with him and his policies.
By the GI Bill and FHA in terms of being able to climb into the middle class. The whole reason I ran was because my life is a testimony to the American dream. And everything that we've been doing since I came into office is designed to make sure that that American dream continues for future generations. I think the challenge right now is that I'm thinking about the next generation, and there are a lot of folks out there who are thinking about the next election. If I were making decisions based on November, then I wouldn't have done some of the things that I did because I knew they weren't popular, but they were the right thing to do. And that's
Let's go to the real jury who will decide whether they were the right things to do with the audience question right here.
Thank you very much, and quite frankly, good afternoon, President Obama. I am deeply honored to finally be in this forum, and so grateful for CNBC making the forum available so that you can speak to American citizens just like myself. Well, I am a Chief Financial Officer for a veteran service organization, AMVETS, here in Washington. I'm also a mother, I'm a wife, I'm an American veteran, and I'm one of your middle-class Americans. And quite frankly, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted of defending you, defending your administration, defending the mantle of change that I voted for, and deeply disappointed with where we are right now. I've been told that I voted for a man who said he was going to change things in a meaningful way for the middle class. I'm one of those people, and I'm waiting, sir. I'm waiting. I don't feel it yet. And I thought, well, it wouldn't be in great measure. I would feel it in some small measure. I have 2 children in private school, and the financial recession has taken an enormous toll on my family. My husband and I have joked for years that we thought we were well beyond the hot dogs and beans era of our lives. But quite frankly, it's starting to knock on our door and ring true that might be where we're headed again. And quite frankly, Mr. President, I need you to answer this honestly. Is this my new reality?
And it turns out it very well may have been, because that was in September of 2010. By November, after the election, about a week or two after the election, she was laid off. So obviously her situation did not improve under Barack Obama, at least not in the short term. I sincerely hope she has recovered since then. Are you getting this now? Barack Obama is a disaster. He was an economic disaster. He was a dumpster fire. And that was nearly 2 years into his presidency, and someone who had supported him was saying, I'm exhausted by trying to defend what you're doing that does not work. And it didn't work for 8 years, by the way. It just didn't. It didn't. But all that is not the real reason I am ecstatic for the opponents of the Democrat Party regarding Barack Obama wading in and supposedly campaigning on their behalf. People tend to forget something very simple. The Democrats lost more than 1,000 elected offices from the time Barack Obama was inaugurated in 2009 until he left in January of 2017. They went from 28 governorships, a small minority, 56% of governors, down to 16 governors. 16, 32%. They went from having 256 members of the House, a strong majority, to just 194 members. They went from 58 senators, and if you counted the 2 independents that always caucus with them, you had 60. And then they went to a minority in the Senate by the time Barack Obama left office. And state legislatures is where it is most stunning to me. In 2009, the Democrat Party controlled 60. They have majorities in 60 of the 99 state assembly houses or state senate houses in the United States. By 2017, after the 2016 election, they were down to only 31. This is why I am ecstatic to hear that Barack Obama wants to be on the campaign trail. By all means, sir, please get involved. You are the best thing that whoever opposes the Democrats, and of course it's normally Republicans in our two-party system, you are the best thing that can happen to Republican fortunes. Because where you go, Democrats die. Where you speak up, Democrat hopes wither. You've never been good for the Democrat Party. You're not going to be good for the Democrat Party now. You're going to call up everything that they did not like about your presidency because it's no longer about your personality. Why? Because you're not running. It is going to be about results. They lost over 1,000 seats while you were in office. The economy had the weakest post-war recovery on record while you were in office. The economy did not grow at a rate of 3% growth GDP at any time during your presidency. Not at any time. I'm not talking about a quarter. I'm talking about annual GDP growth. Never touched 3%. And that was the first time in American history that that had occurred. ISIS was an organization that was a great threat. Has anybody even heard of ISIS in the last 6 months? 10 months? What happened to ISIS? They were a problem that wasn't going away, and all of a sudden, no one's even hearing about them anymore. They've been devastated. How'd that happen? How come you couldn't do that, Mr. Obama? Or is it that you would not? This is what we're coming down to. I want Barack Obama on the front lines of every Democrat campaign during this midterm election season as we can get. I'm almost willing to put money into making sure that he gets where he needs to be and is able to be rested, refreshed, and to talk all the nonsense that he wants to. Because Barack Obama is such a narcissist, he doesn't even realize how much of a failure he was. He does not realize how poorly America fared under his supposed leadership. But Americans do recognize that is why Hillary Clinton, who basically promised to be a continuation of Barack Obama, was defeated. And it really wasn't as close as people want to say. Oh, but she won the popular vote, which has never mattered in the history of the United States, who wins the popular vote. Not in the presidential election. The rules aren't even set up for that. It wasn't really close. She only got 232 out of 538. She got well less than half. Here is my takeaway. I am glad that Barack Obama is speaking on behalf of the Democrat Party. I'm ecstatic. I could not be happier. The more he talks and the more he tries to revise history and cover over his sins and try to take credit for things that happened after he left office, the more people are going to be in remembrance of why they did not select the person that he described as the most qualified candidate ever to run for president. They rejected her because they finally had a chance to reject you. They never rejected your personality because they believe things about you that aren't true. But when it came down to policy, they could not wait to get rid of you, sir. And the more you talk about your policy and your results, the likelihood that the Democrats will be back in power anywhere other than a corporate hotel where they can commiserate about why they are no longer a major party is just low. Stanley, Levy, Black Man Thinking. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, talkamerica.radio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 96.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Pennsylvania is slowly but surely going off the rails, even though it is a state that Donald Trump did carry. And who knows, he may be able to carry it again. The reason they're going off the rails is not because the electorate has changed their mind about Trump. It's because the Democrats who are in office don't really care what the electorate in Pennsylvania desires. They have an ideology. They're going to push it. And they don't want the people to get involved with regard to that. Heritage.org published an article back on the 5th of this month. Pennsylvania agency goes around legislature, which basically means you're ignoring the will of the people, to impose gender ideology. So what's that about? A Pennsylvania agency has made an end run around citizens to impose gender ideology. Last month, which would be August, the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission released new guidance reinterpreting the category of sex in state anti-discrimination law to include sex assigned at birth, sexual orientation, transgender identity, gender transition, and/or gender expression. The commission circumvented the state legislature, which never added categories like sexual orientation and gender identity into the law, thereby circumventing voters as well. This new policy could majorly curtail the First Amendment rights of citizens, as a similar policy has already done in Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is a hotbed of silliness, progressive foolishness, almost without bounds. And what is going on in Philadelphia is now being put in place at the state level, and nobody got to vote on a thing. We don't need you, Joe Citizen, Jane Citizen, to weigh in on the laws and the regulations under which you will live. We got this. Love the Democrat Party and the progressives who are in it. But what does this change in policy mean for the average Pennsylvanian? Going back to the article, back in March, Philadelphia put out an urgent call for 300 families to provide foster care to help care for the flood of children coming into the system due to the opioid crisis. Just a few days later, the city halted child placements of Catholic social services. Halted that. The reason? To investigate whether Catholic social services had violated the city's Fair Practices Ordinance, a policy that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. In short, what the government of Philadelphia wants is for the Catholic Church to violate all of its doctrines and take children who need parents and put them with homosexuals to raise. The Catholic Church is unlikely to do that. They will find somebody. They will find some heterosexual couple or some heterosexual person to take care of foster children. But they said you can't discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity, categories that the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission now considers to be built in to the definition of sex in state anti-discrimination law. It was never added by the legislature, never voted on by the people, but now it's there. Catholic Social Services, like many other religious adoption agencies, opts to place children in homes with both a mother and a father in accord with their religious convictions. Now the city is effectively shutting down Catholic Social Services for its beliefs about marriage and the family. Really? So the idea that a child should have a mother and a father is something that the city of Philadelphia and the state of Pennsylvania don't necessarily believe is a good idea. Isn't that interesting? And they didn't ask the people about it. I keep coming back to that. And the reason I keep coming back to that, you have to understand how progressives work. Progressives only want to be in political office so they can impose their agenda. They do not want you to vote on their agenda. As a matter of fact, until very recently, they would mostly hide their real agenda. Barack Obama hid the fact that he has always been pro-homosexual marriage. The rumors and the justifications for those rumors about his own homosexuality have been rampant for years. Years. One News Now, back in August, we're told that the governor of Pennsylvania was positioning homosexuals over Christians. Their article back from August 9th, Christians in Pennsylvania are being warned that their current governor is taking a step that could impact them more than any other Pennsylvanians. Governor Tom Wolf, Democrat, shock, has issued an executive order creating a 40-member commission on LGBTQ affairs, which is to look into the state of affairs for people within that group and report any suggestions back to his office. Wow. Dana Gramley of the American Family Association of Pennsylvania believes that the commission is a bad idea. In Pennsylvania, she says, only 2.7% of the population identify themselves as homosexual, transgender, bisexual, or lesbian. So we have a governor who's willing to target 2.7% of the population. What about the other 97.3%? Don't they get a say? Where's their commission? The move would give the group an additional platform to promote their agenda and lobby for legislation to lift their status higher and higher while attempting to normalize it in the minds of others when it currently is not. He has a commission on Latin Americans. He has a commission on women. He has commissions that specifically deal with those unchangeable characteristics, totally ignoring the fact that this commission is advocating those with changeable characteristics. Oh, no, you can't change. No, guys, you need to wake up. Folks give up the homosexual lifestyle on the regular. The progressives do not want you to know, do not want you to believe that, and have gone so far to try to make it criminal to support anyone who practices homosexuality who wants to give up the practice. If it were not changeable, you would need no such law. If it were not changeable, you would not have had that young lady over in Uganda not that long ago who had been lesbian for more than a decade, who decided, I can't do this anymore. And she was a huge spokesman for homosexual rights in Uganda. She ran away from the church and now she's come back. And she has said she intends to get married to a man in accordance with her faith. Her parents they kicked her to the curb. They cut off relations with her once she announced that she was going to live as a homosexual, as a lesbian, because that is counter to their beliefs. And I'm sorry for all those who understand Christianity or claim they understand Christianity. They better understand, you stick with God no matter what anybody else wants to stick with. If you don't want to go with God, you go wherever you want to. But as Joshua said, as for me and my house. Now, if you don't want to go along with what we're doing here, you're just no longer part of the house. Oh, that's so cruel. No, it's not. What's cruel is pimping a lie to people that has no possible outcome than denigrating the natural order of human beings with regard to family. That's cruel. And in Pennsylvania, we're talking about 2.7% of the people. Why do I need a commission to deal with 2.7% of the people? Well, they're under such pressure. Who's under pressure? What pressure are they under? That they need a commission to push law. Why, if they're under so much pressure, how come? This is a thing that always gets me. Back in the 1950s and the 1960s, blacks were under tremendous pressure. They had been under pressure since the end of Reconstruction. And they took their case to the people and got popular support for revisions and changes in law. It came at a cost. But now the homosexual community doesn't believe that they should pay a thing. It should just happen for them because they are politically connected. And politicians, progressive politicians, would rather cater to 2.7% of the population than try to convince a majority of the electorate that their agenda is correct. They don't want to deal with the electorate. They know what the electorate is likely to say, and they don't want to hear that, so they're not going to have the discussion. We'll just put it in. We'll just form a commission, and we'll go straight from this commission to the state assembly, to the state senate, to the governor's desk, and nobody gets to vote on a thing. Have you figured that out yet? This is the same state where you had a high school that chose to pump in to the student body without the prior knowledge or consent of parents 4 videos that were favorable to the homosexual lifestyle. They're doing this to high school kids who are still minors. And when the parents came and said, we would like to see what it is you showed our children, the superintendent said, no, you don't have a right to see that. Wait a minute. I'm paying for this school, but you're telling me I don't have a right to see what you are putting in front of my child? Why is that? And they claimed that it was because it was student work product. Well, they eventually released the links to the videos, and they were produced by CBS News. By CBS News back in 2012. This is 2018, y'all. I don't think we had any student work product going into that, at least none of the students currently at the high school. They lied. They lied about what they were doing, and they chose to ignore the rights of parents in presenting information that could have been objected to by any number of them. Wonder why they wanted to do that. Well, actually, I don't wonder. I have a pretty good idea. So Pennsylvania progressive governance, not a Pennsylvania progressive electorate, is ignoring the people so that they can write into regulation and hopefully in their mind write into law rights for homosexuals that 97.3% of the population will not be able to share. And somebody thinks this is a good idea. The governor thinks it's a good idea. He's trying to give himself an out instead of just doing it. I'm going to have a 40-person commission, and therefore we have a consensus that this is the right thing to do. That's what elections are for, if you want a consensus for what the right thing to do is with respect to state laws and state regulations. That's why you have elections, so people can run on these positions, put them before those who have to live under them, and let them decide if that's what they want. The very fact that you are progressive is exactly why you do not want to be ruled by an election, because you know that since 2009, progressives have been losing ground. And it's only beginning to accelerate under the age of Trump, because Trump is now appointing judges who are nobody's progressives. You cannot make America great again with progressive ideology. You cannot make America great again by coddling homosexuality. I'm not saying that you should bring back the anti-sodomy laws, but there should not be any law favoring anyone because of their sexual choices. And they are choices. We have a lot of things built into our legal culture now that need to be exposed and expunged if we're going to get back to where we want to be. And Pennsylvania is off the rails. I'm going to turn this over to my good friend Ron Edwards, and after that we'll be back with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinking.
Florida Democrat gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum may accuse Republican candidate Ron DeSantis of racism because he used the words monkey up in his warning against voting for the Bernie Sanders anointed candidate. That's pretty sad, but that may be the best the Democrat can offer. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards on today's page from the Edwards Notebook. Think about it. Republican Ron DeSantis wants to further improve Florida's booming economy, reduce burdensome regulations, help protect against illegal immigration, etc. On the other hand, Andrew Gillum, the Democrat, hopes to increase Florida corporate tax rates, force taxpayers to fund a Florida single-payer medical care boondoggle, abolish ICE, and unite Floridians behind open borders. Gillum has already accused DeSantis of being divisive like Trump because, like Trump, he wants to end illegal immigration. Yep, the leftist Democrat might have a slightly better chance of becoming Florida's governor by screaming racism than by campaigning to slow economic growth, stopping no limits on illegal immigration, and abolishing ICE. I'm Ron Edwards. Join me Fridays at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on AmericaMatters.us and SHR Media. Also Sunday midnights on Talk America Radio Network.
Ron Edwards, the new voice of America.
Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
I have a dream. One day, this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Black Man Thinkin.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
Black Man Thinkin.
Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race.
Black Man Thinkin.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And this idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power except the sovereign people, is still the newest and the most unique idea in all the long history of man's relation to man. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Black Man Thinkin.
In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Black Man Thinkin.
Stanley Levy with Hour 2 of Black Man Thinkin here on the dominant force of Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida, Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 96.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, the desperation that's being shown by the Democrats, and particularly Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, with regard to the confirmation hearing for Brett Kavanaugh as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, is really going over the top. But it's to be fair, it's not just them. All the Democrats are out of order. They've done everything they can to try to overlook the fact that they are not in the majority, and therefore they really do not have the ability to stop anything. They've gone back and cited that, well, you guys didn't want to talk to Merrick Garland. No, because we were in the majority and we didn't want Barack Obama to appoint another Supreme Court justice. He had his two. We're moving on. That's not fair. That doesn't matter. I'm just saying, it doesn't matter. By the way, it's been demonstrated that Brett Kavanaugh and Merrick Garland agree like 93% of the time. So you're not really getting anyone that's that much different from Merrick Garland, since they agreed and concurred on the same opinions 93% of the time. So why be upset? If you liked Garland, you were going to vote for Garland, and you were, because Barack Obama appointed him, Democrats, then you might as well vote for this guy because he's pretty much almost a carbon copy. Nevertheless, because it is Donald Trump who is putting this gentleman forward, we're getting histrionics and drama that is just almost difficult to fathom. Here is what happened on the first day, as the Democrats decided they were going to do everything they could to even stop the confirmation process from beginning.
On the nomination of Judge Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman.
To serve as Associate Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized for a question before we proceed.
Regular order.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized to ask a question before we proceed. The committee received just last night, less than 15 hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that we have not had an opportunity to review or read or analyze.
You're out of order. I'll proceed.
We cannot possibly move forward, Mr. Chairman.
I extend a very warm welcome
to Judge Kavanaugh. We have not been given an opportunity to have a meaningful hearing on the nominee.
Their two daughters.
Mr. Chairman,
I agree with my colleague,
Senator
Harris.
Mr. Chairman, we received 42,000 documents that we haven't been able to review last night, and we believe this hearing should be postponed.
I know this is an exciting day for all of you here, and you're rightly proud
Mr. Chairman, if we cannot be recognized, I move to adjourn.
The American people.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn.
Directly from Judge Kavanaugh later this afternoon.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn. Mr. Chairman, we have been denied real access to the documents we need to advise.
Mr. Chairman, regular order is called for.
Which turns this hearing into a charade and a mockery of our norms.
Well,
and Mr. Chairman, I therefore move to adjourn this hearing.
Okay. Command order. Chuck. The motion is adjourned. We're not in the executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I ask for a roll call vote on my motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adjourn. I ask for a roll call vote.
We're not in executive session. We will continue as planned.
Mr. Chairman, may I be recognized, sir? Mr. Chairman, I appeal to the chair to recognize myself or one of my colleagues.
You're out of order.
Mr. Chairman, I appeal to be recognized on your sense of decency and integrity. Even the documents you have requested, Mr. Chairman, even the ones that you said, the limited documents you have requested, this committee has not received. And the documents we have, you, sir, have labeled committee confidential. They should be transparent. This committee, sir, is a violation of even the values I've heard you talk about time and time again, the ideals that we should have. What is the rush? What are we trying to hide by not having the documents out front? What is with the rush? What are we hiding by not letting those documents come out? Sir, this committee is a violation of the values that we as a committee have striven for, transparency. We are rushing through this process in a way that is unnecessary. And I appeal for the motion to at least be voted on. Mr. Chairman. At least let's have a vote, because when we wrote you a letter on August 24th asking to have a meeting on this issue, you denied us even the right to meet. So here we are having a meeting. Let's at least debate this issue. Let's at least call this for a vote. I appeal to your sense of fairness and decency, your commitments that you've made to transparency. This violates what you have even said and called for, sir. You've called for documents, you yourself, limited documents. We thought there should be more. We have not received the documents that you have even called for. So, sir, based upon your own principles, your own values, I call for at least to have a debate or a vote on these issues and not for us to rush through this process.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, Mr. Chairman, I've heard calls for regular order.
I'd like to respond to Senator Booker. Senator Booker, I think that I respect very much a lot of things you do, but you spoke about my decency and you spoke about my decency and integrity, and I think you are taking advantage of my decency and integrity.
What you just saw was a demonstration of the people, both elected and resistance individuals, who want to have control of the Senate. It's very clear they will not allow for anything with which they disagree to even be heard if it's in the majority, if they're in the majority. And they will stoop to nothing. There's nothing too low for them. They know the rules. They don't care. They know they're outnumbered and there's really nothing they can do. Then they grandstand. They don't care. In all these things, we're looking at something very, for lack of a better term, evil. This is supposed to be a constitutional republic. The Democrats would rather it be a democracy that they control even when they are not in the minority. They want people to give up their advantage in a democratic system, which comes with being the majority, to recognize them because they believe they have superior beliefs. And of course, the hearing room was packed with, this is the interesting thing about progressives and their resistance operatives. Who has time to go sit around for hours on end in a Senate hearing room screaming about a Supreme Court nominee? Who's got that kind? The unemployed. Now, you're not going to see too many real Americans in there because there's only 3.9% unemployment. They have jobs. They have things to do. But those who want America to not be America, who want to basically go on and have two sets of rules, one for women and one for men, who basically want to see that children continue to be slaughtered in the womb without stop and without consequence to those who do the killing, they are the ones who want to try to tell you what's best for America. Here is the problem. They've been losing that argument since 2009. On abortion, they're losing in spades. The states that are restricting abortion is becoming a number closing on a majority of the states in this country. Abortion is being rolled back as it should be, and the federal government should reverse Roe v. Wade, which would not make abortion illegal. It would make it something that is determined on a state-by-state basis as to whether the residents of that state want it to be legal or how it should be regulated if it's not going to be fully legal. That follows in with federalism, which is kind of what the founders of the country who wrote the Constitution imagined, that the states would be able to decide these matters for themselves, and the federal government played no role, nor should they. Now, Kamala Harris has been up to complaining about documents that she did not get, and then she goes off to creatively edit those documents when she finds them to change the answers of Brett Kavanaugh into something he did not even say. And she's okay with that, by the way, just so you know. But she wants the hearings to stop. So if I can't stop the hearings, I'm going to lie about the words of the nominee, and maybe if you believe my lies, then we can stop the hearing. We can delay the hearing. They're not interested in delaying the hearing. They're interested in scuttling the nomination. They don't want this guy. They don't want any guy. They really don't. I honestly believe that if Donald Trump had nominated Merrick Garland, you would have the same discussion that you have going on now. I could be wrong, but the hatred for Donald Trump is the only thing that matters to these people. Nothing else. This nominee, Brett Kavanaugh, has an A++ rating from the American Bar Association. Highly qualified, their highest possible rating. But you don't want him. Why? Because Trump nominated him. And that's all there is to it. Let's go over to Cory Booker. Cory Booker has been extremely interesting in all this. Cory Booker decided he was going to put his Senate seat at risk, kinda, in a bizarre little drama that he cooked up, whereby he compared himself to Kirk Douglas in a 1960 movie called Spartacus.
Anyone who didn't get documents released to use during the hearing, I have to say, as I've tried to cooperate and make everything available to everybody that they wanted, they only have themselves to blame. The request was made to release these documents for the first time last night after the senator asked the question of the nominee.
The very section of the process that you read points out the absurdity of the process. We had a number of those documents released to us the night before, and to think that we could somehow ask you about the documents, reveal to you what questions we wanted to ask, and then it's not even your determination. It goes back to Bill Burke. I brought up a document entitled Racial Profiling. And the fact that there is nothing in that document that's personal information, there's nothing national security related, the fact that it was labeled as committee confidential exposes that this process, sir, is a bit of a sham.
Was it a sham when we did it for Gorsuch? Was it a sham when Senator Leahy did it?
I was disappointed to see last night that some of our colleagues are unwilling or unable to conduct themselves in this hearing with regular order and in accordance with the rules of the committee and the rules of the Senate. It's inappropriate to raise these in an open session before the committee. And I think our colleagues understand that, but nevertheless decided to go ahead anyway.
No Senate rule and no history of the Senate accounts for what is going on right now. Senator Cornyn actually made a very good point. I knowingly violated the rules that were put forth, and I'm told that the committee confidential rules have knowing consequences. I'm going to release the email about racial profiling, and I understand that the penalty comes with potential ousting from the Senate. And if Senator Cornyn believes that I violated Senate rules, I openly invite and accept the consequences of my team releasing that email right now. What I'm releasing this document right now to show, sir, is that we have a process here for a person, the highest office in the land, for a lifetime appointment. We're rushing through this before me and my colleagues can even Read and digest the information.
Running for president is no excuse for violating the rules of the Senate. No senator deserves to sit on this committee or serve in the Senate, in my view, if they decide to be a law unto themselves and willingly flout the rules of the Senate and the determination of confidentiality and classification. That is irresponsible and conduct unbecoming a senator.
And that's a reasonable criticism of Cory Booker, because Cory Booker is an idiot of the first order. Regarding his Spartacus ploy, the New York Post said, they wrote an article on the 6th of September, how Cory Booker's Spartacus moment fizzled out. Booker was claiming he was standing up for the release of classified documents written by nominee Brett Kavanaugh about the use of racial profiling at airports in the aftermath of 9/11. He made a point of saying he was willing to get expelled from the Senate by releasing the emails the committee had deemed classified. His Spartacus quote was a reference to the 1960 Oscar-winning movie starring Kirk Douglas, which was made before he was even born. Okay. Interesting thing is, it's unclear what he meant by going through that, since the emails that he was talking about had been declassified before his melodramatics, which made his Spartacus speech meaningless. And as he continued to grandstand, Committee Chair Chuck Grassley of Iowa lost patience. Can I ask you how long you're going to say the same thing 3 or 4 times? And of course, the documents provided nothing of great bombshell value to the hearing. Guys, understand this. Kavanaugh is going to be confirmed in all likelihood. The drama that you're seeing here is playing to a small part of the American political population, the very far left. This is the same people who have been getting their behinds handed to them since 2009. My guess is that it's going to continue, because I really believe these type of histrionics and this type of drama repulses the electorate, and the best way to get rid of this drama is to put people who behave like Cory Booker, like Kamala Harris, and other Democrats, just put them out of office. Then you don't have to worry about their behavior. Doesn't matter. But this whole thing smacks of desperation. Harris and Booker are desperate. The whole Democrat Party is desperate, because they know that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is on the clock. She could die any minute, and then Donald Trump gets to go for the trifecta. I don't wish any ill upon anyone, but to be honest with you, I would love to see Donald Trump get a 3rd crack at a Supreme Court Associate Justice. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', will be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinkin', here on the dominant force in Internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also, WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio. Freedom in AmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk, AM 1330 and FM 96.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Well, we had a very interesting women's final at the U.S. Tennis Open this year, and it was made that way by what has become an infrequent but noticeable event, and that is a Serena Williams meltdown in a pressure situation. Now, before we talk about what happened at this year's event, we need to go back. This has been going on with Serena Williams for a while at this tournament specifically. I don't want to talk about what's going on anywhere else, but for example, back in 2009, in a semifinal, I believe it was against Kim Clijsters, she foot faulted during the second set. She'd already lost the first set, and she was on the verge of losing the second set. She foot faulted and thereby gave her opponent a double match point. The lineswoman, who made the foot fault call was attacked verbally by Serena Williams. Serena Williams was so out of control, she threatened bodily harm to the woman. There's a dispute over whether or not she said she would kill her. The lines person said that Serena says that, and Serena vehemently denied that she said that. Nevertheless, she did use profanity and made sure that she went back at least one time after the incident, after originally casting her words at her, made a specific point to turn and go back to her again and make sure that that lineswoman knew exactly how she felt, and there was no love in anything that she said. The lines person, feeling threatened because she was a very small woman, and of course Serena Williams is a lot of things, but she's not a small woman, she called for the tournament officials who evaluated what had happened on court at that time. And since she had already committed earlier code violations, this is a consistent thing with Serena Williams. This is what you need to understand. So this was 2009. She had already done, I think, at least one, maybe two other code violations, so that the next code violation she got was going to cost her a point. Well, it was match point for Clijsters. So as a result of her additional code violation, they awarded a point to Kim Clijsters, which ended the match. It was a semifinal match. And she seemed to accept the judgment, because she wasn't anything she could do, and gathered up her things, went and shook hands with Kim Clijsters at least, and then left the court. That was 2009. In 2011, oh, by the way, in 2009 Serena was beaten in straight sets. In 2011, at the U.S. Open again, Serena had another meltdown, and this is a very brief synopsis of what occurred back during that tournament.
Serena Williams' sharp tongue put her on center stage Sunday when she lost her cool during a match. Williams went on to criticize the ref. This comes after Williams had cracked her racket after losing 12 consecutive points.
So there you have, let me go ahead and break that down for you. In the second set, what happened was Serena, trying to mount a comeback, she had lost the first set, she tends to do that, and she was trying to mount a comeback against a young woman from Australia, I believe, and after she had struck the ball and while her opponent had yet to address it, she screamed out loudly, not a grunt on impact, as you often hear from tennis players. As they hit the ball, they utter a grunt or some sound. This was after she had hit the ball, while her opponent was approaching the ball on the other end, and she screamed out, and her opponent mishit the ball. According to the rules of tennis, she can't do that. According to the rules of tennis, Serena knows she can't do that. She did it anyway. Well, she, the best way to say it, she blew up. Called the called the chair umpire a hater, said she was ugly inside. And oh, by the way, she had lost 12 consecutive points. She was getting smoked and lost that match in straight sets again, blowing up at the officials. This is her history. She also lost in 2015 when she was going for a calendar year Grand Slam. I believe that was in the semifinal. That was considered a big upset, but she seemed to handle that one much better. There was no controversy that I can recall from that tournament for her, at least not in that match. That brings you to 2018, when Serena Williams just totally showed her behind. She was getting beaten and beaten badly. And let me go ahead and tell you how the USTA indicated what happened. Here is their statement on the women's final. On the fifth point of the second game of the second set between Naomi Osaka, the eventual champion, and Serena Williams, the chair umpire witnessed coaching taking place from Williams' coach. Even though her coach has admitted to coaching, he admitted to it, Williams has made it clear that she did not receive any coaching, as though that's the rule. Well, if you received it, it's okay. If you didn't receive it, it's okay. You're not supposed to be doing coaching from the box. Everybody knows that. They do it anyway. Nevertheless, in accordance with the rules, Williams was assessed a code violation, resulting in a warning. At the completion of the fifth game of the second set, Williams was assessed a second code violation for racket abuse. That's something that happens quite regularly when Serena Williams is getting smoked. And that required a penalty. That was a point penalty. At the changeover at 4-3, Williams was assessed a third code violation for verbal abuse in the judgment of the umpire, which then required a game penalty. The chair umpire's decision was final and not reviewable by the tournament referee or Grand Slam supervisor who were called to the court at that time. She went off on him. It was interesting. Here's part of her words with the chair umpire.
Get coaching. I didn't get coaching. I didn't get coaching. You need to make an announcement that I didn't get coaching. I don't cheat. I didn't get coaching. How can you say that? You owe me an apology. You owe me an apology. I have never cheated in my life. I have a daughter and I stand what's right for her and I've never cheated. And you owe me an apology. You will never do that.
So, cheating occurred on behalf of Serena. The coach who was accused of cheating admitted that he cheated. He admitted that he broke the rules by offering coaching from the box. Doesn't matter whether or not Serena received it or saw it. How can you tell all that? She went off, demanded an apology, and for some reason brought her daughter into it. Now, I know she's just recently had a daughter, and I'm like, okay, well, saying she's emotional. No, this is not emotion because of motherhood. This is a repeat offense. This is who she is. This is what she does. When the pressure gets to her, she blows up. And she blows up in a way where she can be profane, she can be threatening, and she's definitely not sportsmanlike. Now, what her daughter had to do with anything, as though her daughter was on the court or as her daughter was in the box watching. And if you're really concerned about your daughter, why would you be going off, embarrassing yourself, and disrespecting your opponent? Naomi Osaka did nothing wrong. But while you're carrying on your histrionics between you and the referee who is calling you out for your violations, she has to sit there and just take it. And she did take it. And she took the match and the championship in straight sets. Once again, Serena couldn't rise to the occasion, and she lost her composure. This is not an isolated incident. The fact that she is a new mother has nothing to do with it. She was doing this before she had a child. The interesting thing to me is how she kind of talks past it during the interview after the match. So here's a little snippet of that.
At one point I felt bad because I'm crying and she's crying and
She just won, and I'm not sure if they were happy tears or they were just sad tears because of the moment. And, I felt like, wow, this isn't how I felt when I won my first Grand Slam. So I was like, well, I definitely don't want her to feel like that. So, maybe it was the mom in me that was like, listen, we got to pull ourselves together here.
That is indeed laughable. How come the mom in you didn't show up beforehand? And how come, the reason you don't recall feeling that way when you won your first Grand Slam is nobody disrespected your moment in that way. Nobody came to your wedding, as it were, and got drunk and sloppy and started trashing all the guests and saying terrible things about everybody. Nobody did that when you won your first Grand Slam. You were not disrespected. You disrespected Naomi Osaka. You were wrong. You don't like to admit when you're wrong. We get that. But then while you're wrong, all of a sudden the mother in you comes out? How come the mother in you didn't come out when to think about how your behavior was impacting your opponent who actually looked to you as a mentor? What kind of foolishness are you about? That's the issue here. Look, let me be clear about something. Serena Williams is an outstanding female tennis player. Outstanding. More than 20 Grand Slam titles. I think she's won more Grand Slam titles on the women's circuit than anyone in history, so you cannot deny her accomplishments on the tennis court. She has a long way to go as a human being. A long way to go. When you have the type of privileges that she has, you don't act the way that she acts. That's all there is to it. There's no reason for that. Take your loss. If you're not having a good day, you're not having a good day. It's an individual sport. People are not perfect. And since you're the top of the sport or consider the top of the sport, everybody's going to try to bring their A game to you. Everybody's going to try to play their best. If you're not ready to meet that on any given occasion, there's a likelihood you're going to lose. And if you're really off your game, as you were on this past Saturday, you're likely to lose badly, which you did. I see all the people out there trying to defend this, and I'm like, you know what? We have lost our way as a culture and a country when you try to defend unnecessary poor sportsmanship. I know somebody's going to say, what about John McEnroe? I don't remember anybody defending John McEnroe. John McEnroe didn't even defend John McEnroe. And he doesn't. He just says this is what happened. But in this case, a young Haitian Japanese American, or an American of Haitian and Japanese descent, representing the country of Japan, at 20 years old, had a special moment and couldn't really enjoy it because the woman who thought she was the best in the world didn't have the class to maintain her composure. I find that reprehensible. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking. I guess that's what they mean by that black girl magic. Yeah. We'll be back right after this. Stanley Levy, Black Man Thinking, here on the dominant force in internet conservatism, TalkAmericaRadio.us. Also WDDQ, Talk 92.1 FM in Valdosta, Georgia. WJHC, Talk 107.5 North Florida Talk Radio, FreedomInAmericaRadio.com, and WLBB News Talk AM 1330 and FM 96.3 in Carrollton, Georgia. Final segment of the show. The NFL is still showing signs of tanking, and it is an out-of-control situation. Let me say this before I say anything else. The statement that was attributed to the Tennessee Titans owner, I believe, or the North Carolina or the Carolina Panthers owner, I can't remember which one it was. I think it might have been Carolina. He made the statement that you know what, the inmates are running the prison. That's exactly what's happening. There is no leadership in the NFL. There is zero leadership in the NFL. For the NFL to be in a situation where the biggest thing going on in the league has nothing to do with football. It has everything to do with whether or not the people playing the game actually have respect for the country that allows them to make all this money. And that's all the issue is about to everybody but the players, some of the players. And the idea that anyone is actually respecting their opinion when they only have a 3 to 4 year shelf life on average, and that's it. And then about three-quarters of them are going to end up broke after 5 years anyway. Who cares what these people have to say? Nevertheless, here we are. As you may recall, this all started when Colin Kaepernick lost his job and started dating one of the few heterosexual females in the Black Lives Matter movement. And all of a sudden he became an activist. He became Islam, he became an activist, he became anti-American. Yes, he's anti-American. He became anti-police. Yes, he's anti-police. You don't wear pig socks because you don't wear socks with pigs on it, dressed in police uniforms because you support the police. There's no reason to do that. You could simply speak. But he didn't. And the thing that people keep forgetting in the midst of all this, the reason why Colin Kaepernick is not on an NFL roster is because he sucks. His last 2 years after the Super Bowl, he was the worst rated passer in accuracy in the league. He also, in December of 2016, set a single game record for poor quarterback play by being sacked for more times than he actually had passing yards. He was sacked 5 times against the Chicago Bears and only produced 4 passing yards. That is an NFL record. He's not that good. And as a result, and because he still wanted starter money, people are passing. Denver offered him $7 million. He was coming off of $14 million that he opted out of. He could have gone back for that. He didn't. He didn't want to stay in San Francisco. He thought he was worth more money, despite the fact that his skills were obviously and rapidly declining. He could have taken $7 million from Denver and worked his way back up if he actually still had ability. He thought he was bigger than that. And as a result, he ended up with no contract. Nobody was going to pay him that type of money. He's not that quality of a player anymore. And now, after not having played at all for 2 years and having become a vegetarian, so he's lost a lot of weight, all this other stuff, he's really done. He's not playing football, not in the NFL again. He's probably not playing professional football anywhere. But this was the guy who got all this started primarily because he lost his starting job as an NFL quarterback, and he was sleeping with an activist who kept pushing him to do other things so he could continue to spend quality time between her knees. Bless his heart. And the NFL has floundered for a couple of seasons now. They're going into their 3rd season of floundering about this issue. And let's go back to May when the NFL tried to get ahead of this. They tried and failed miserably by announcing a new anthem policy.
Stand up or stay in the locker room. The NFL issuing a new rule penalizing teams if their players kneel during the national anthem. President Trump weighing in on this one for the very first time, saying the owners did the right thing and saying this.
I don't think people should be staying in locker rooms, but still, I think it's good. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
All right, retired Marine Corps bomb technician Johnny Joey Jones lost his legs in a blast in Afghanistan. Joins us now to react. Hey, Johnny, so we have you two-timing today. Earlier, we were talking about your spaghetti and meatballs.
That's it.
And now let's talk about this. How do you feel about it as a veteran?
Well, this one isn't as exciting to talk about, I'll tell you. But as a veteran, but just as an American in general, I got in on this early on. I've spoken to Colin Kaepernick. I've spoken to Eric Reed. I've spoken to some of the players, and last year I went and spoke to many NFL teams.
Because standing is important to you.
It's important to me, but what's most important to me is that these players who might be tempted to kneel understand that this argument does go full circle. So the argument is, this is my First Amendment right. It is patriotic to protest, which is 100% true. But also, that comes full circle to why do you have that First Amendment right? Why is it patriotic to protest? Because someone fought for your freedoms, and because this country is the only country in the world that wakes up in the morning and goes, We're not perfect, but we want to be. We're willing to be.
What do you think of the president's comment to Brian yesterday that if they don't want to stand, maybe they shouldn't even be in the country?
I don't necessarily agree with that, but I appreciate the president cares that much about it. I really do. I think that it is a First Amendment right. I think that they're also in a place of work. I think that people sitting at home dealing with who knows what issues that are just as important as anything they would protest deserve to check out and watch a football game for 2 hours. That's a service they ultimately provide to this country. I thank those players for it, and I ask them to keep that in mind, to stay in the locker room. But what I would do is I would stand in front of every one of them kneeling. I'd give them a hug, and I'd say, let's talk, but stand with me. Let me stand with you on this issue.
Right.
Well, when the national anthem starts to play at any sporting event, you're the one we think of. You and so many other people. Look at this. You know, you have a hard time getting up the steps to even get here. You had to learn to stand again. It's the least we can do. I just want to say thank you.
There was a time where standing was the most important thing in my life because it was something I couldn't do. And so that there was a time when it meant so much to me just to learn how to do it. And so it's an important issue to me, but not just as a veteran, as an American that cares about this country and the people in it.
So much right and so much wrong about that position at the same time. There is no reason to seek common ground with people who disrespect the country. There isn't. If you have a problem with the country, sure. A whole lot of people have problems with the country. The flag stands for unity. It doesn't stand for unanimity. The idea is that you're going to work things out, but you're not going to work things out by disrespecting the things that matter to me. And let's not forget that the whole thing that they're talking about, police brutality, is a manufactured issue. It's not real. It's not. Police use or threat of force, the percentage of the time that occurs, has been the same since 1999, about 1.5%, not 10%, not 20%. The number of blacks who are killed by police is less than 300, has been that way for the last 3 years. And whites routinely have twice as many folks who are killed. But we don't see those. You don't see those videos at all. So you had that. And you actually had a story that came out that I think the Miami Dolphins went first in trying to show how they're going to implement this policy, and they indicated that they might suspend players for up to 4 games if they violated the policy. And the policy was that teams would get fined. The players would not get fined by the league. However, the teams could impose whatever penalty they wanted. And the Miami Dolphins went first and said, we'll go ahead and suspend you for up to 4 games if you don't, if you cause us to get fined because you don't want to stand for the anthem. Jerry Jones took another approach. He just basically said, that's not who we are. We're going to respect the flag.
Our policy is that you stand at the anthem, toe on the line.
Does the president returning to this subject regularly make it more difficult for you and the union to come to some kind of agreement on this situation?
Yes, his interest in what we're doing is problematic from my chair, and I would say in general the owner's chair. Unprecedented if you really think about it. And like the very game itself, that's the way it is, and we'll deal with it. We feel strongly about how we deal with it, and we'll do so accordingly. But yes, I'd like everybody would like for it to go away.
Well, the owners have the opportunity. They have the power to make it go away. Bottom line, what they're afraid of is something they're already losing, which is money. They're afraid to lose money. They're already losing money. And they are afraid to take control of their game by basically telling their employees these are the rules of employment. The only way you're going to get behind this issue is to agree with the fans. More than half, the majority of fans believe that disrespecting the flag, which is exactly how they see taking a knee during the national anthem, they see that as disrespectful. They see that as wrong. They do not agree with it. If you want to get ahead of the issue, stop doing things that ticks the fans off. Don't do it. You want to protest? You got 6 days a week when you're not playing a game. You can do whatever you want. You can show up anywhere you wish. You can put your money wherever you want to and say this, that, and the other. But on game day, when you're on somebody else's clock, leave that alone. And that's all the fans want. They're not telling you to change your mind. They're telling you to change your approach. But they're not trying to hear that. Interestingly, the lack of leadership from the commissioner and the owners and their bungling of this issue and their playing around with Colin Kaepernick and actually paying attention to Colin Kaepernick. You really should not have paid him any attention, but they did. Now they've come back with, as of today, September 9th, they came back with no policy at all.
This is great because we keep getting these updates that the two sides are meeting. And they may keep meeting and they may keep talking, but the fact of the matter is they're not going to get anything this season. There's not going to be a new anthem policy that they implement for the season or during the season. Now, could they do something at a later date? Sure, they always could. But the new policy for this season is no policy. And I think that they want it to just simply die down and go away, and they believe that that's the best way to handle an issue that is so polarizing, with so many strong stances, with Colin Kaepernick standing for what he believes in, with owners standing for what they believe in, with everybody having divergent viewpoints on this topic. New policy is no policy.
Next, that with the contact rules, and again, the NFL has storylines other than the football on week 1.
That will change starting at 1 o'clock Eastern.
Actually, no, it won't. It really won't, because we've already started the season with a Thursday game between Atlanta and the defending Super Bowl champions, or the champions of the last game, Philadelphia. And according to those in the know, viewership was down 13%. It's down. After falling last year, it fell again this year. The ratings are down. That's ridiculous, but that's what's happening. So the idea that people are going to forget about this once the kickoffs begin, no, they haven't. Kickoffs have already begun, and they're not watching. I dare say the Sunday games are not going to show some robust viewership compared to what the NFL is accustomed to. I guess it's going to be lower, and as long as you have this weak sister whining and accommodating of people who do not want to respect the country, it's not going to rise. It's just not. Stuart Varney of Fox Business News actually had this take on the entire topic.
If you thought, or maybe hoped, that football's anthem problem would go away this season, think again. It has been revived, and Nike did it. Tonight, the first game of the new season, and Nike is running an ad featuring Colin Kaepernick, the man who started the anti-police anthem kneeling protests. I don't think this is good for anyone, except perhaps Mr. Kaepernick, who is now being treated as some kind of high-minded moralist. It's bad for football. The game itself is losing ground with far fewer youngsters participating. It's bad for the players. TV ratings dropped sharply last year. That takes money out of the players' pockets. It's extremely annoying for football fans. They don't like seeing our flag disrespected by millionaire athletes. And it's bad for the country. Football is our #1 sport, uniquely American. How does it look to the rest of the world when a handful of kneelers trash our country? This is what happens when divisive politics jumps out of the political arena and infects everything else. And Nike did this. They brought back the controversy, apparently for commercial advantage. I say it's a sad day when a clothing company sticks it to America, a sad day when athletes hurt their own sport, and it's a sad day when football is contaminated with protest politics.
Well, I would agree it's a sad day, but it's also a planned day. If you think the progressive movement in America and the globalists who are at work in the progressive movement in America are not gleeful at the decline in popularity of football, and that fewer children are playing football for whatever reason, and this controversy at the pro level is definitely not allowing those numbers to get better. If you think this makes them unhappy, you really don't understand. Because what he said about football being uniquely American, it is. Nobody else plays and understands this game the way the United States of America does. This is part and parcel of the reason we are a successful country militarily and economically and culturally. Because you can come in, find your role on a team, and you can do your job. It doesn't matter what you did before. Nothing else matters. Can you come in, take this role, and do your job? You don't have to be the biggest guy. You don't have to be the fastest guy, but can you get it done? It's very American. You take this away, you actually hurt American culture. You take something very unique out of American culture, and that is what the left, the progressives, and the globalists want. They want America to no longer be special. If America loses its special identity, they celebrate, because then the people of America become easier to control. It's really that simple. As far as Nike and Kaepernick, it's a big who cares. So Kaepernick's whole ad campaign, or what they've put together for him, is a lie. What did he sacrifice? He's not sacrificing anything. He's not playing. He hasn't played for 2 years. He's never going to play again. But he's getting paid. So what did he sacrifice? He wasn't good enough to play anymore. So again, what did he sacrifice? But the owners of the NFL decided that they wanted to, even though it's not their real background, that they wanted to be social justice enough to ignore the will of the country and to trash their game if necessary. They're getting what they're asking for. The game is going downhill. Between the rules, the poor product that gets on the field, especially on Thursday nights, and this type of foolishness that just simply turns people off, you're going to see this game start to come apart if it keeps up much longer, and it's going to keep up for the rest of this season. Do not get me wrong. I love American football, but what we have right now is an infected game. It needs to be destroyed. However you want to destroy it, it can be rebuilt because it's still part of American culture. You can rebuild this game, but you can't rebuild it with the people currently involved in it. They have contaminated it, and they can't find their way out of a brown paper bag. And that's our show. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. Look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, do take care.
You've been listening to Black Man Thinkin' with your host, Stan Levy. Join Stan midnight to 2 a.m. That's late Monday night into early Tuesday morning. And find him on the web at Black Man Thinkin' without the G. That's blackmanthinkin.com.